Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Great. So today, we're going to be looking at, understanding.
Understanding.
Okay,
Okay.
what means, to really understand something. But we're going to be doing it through a pretty interesting lens, I think.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah. We've got some excerpts here from a text that, brings together the teachings of Jesus and the story of Galileo.
Galileo. So we're bridging science and faith today.
That's exactly it. We
Okay.
often see them as these totally separate things. But Galileo's story, it really shows us how connected they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. Here's this scientist, deeply religious, a Catholic, but his discoveries were shaking things up, challenging what everyone thought they knew about, well, the universe.
Totally. And we've got this quote from him that really captures this. He said, "I do not feel obliged that the same God who has endowed us with sense, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use."
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
Right. I mean, what do you think about when you hear that?
Well, I mean, to me, it speaks volumes about the courage it takes to really pursue truth, even when it means going against the grain, even when it challenges, deeply held belief. I mean, Galileo, he was risking a lot.
He was. I mean, imagine that. Going up against the church, the established authority, because your scientific findings just don't line up with their view of the world.
And that's what's so incredible, isn't it? He could have just, kept his head down,
Yeah.
but he felt this obligation, this drive to follow where his understanding led him.
Absolutely. And that brings us to, kind of the core of what we're diving into today. It's that idea of seeking understanding. And sometimes that means being willing to, question things, even things that we've always held as true. And it's interesting because in these excerpts about Jesus's teachings, we see a similar theme.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you look at those parables about the kingdom of God. It's like they're all about this radical commitment to finding something of immense value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that parable of the hidden treasure, for example. I mean, picture this, right? This guy just stumbles upon this treasure buried in a field. And he's so blown away by it, he sells everything he owns just to buy that field.
Right. It's everything, his whole livelihood. And you see that same radical commitment in Parable of the Pearl, the one perfect pearl. I mean, this merchant, he doesn't even hesitate. He sells everything he has to get it.
And that's what makes you think, right? I mean, what's that level of commitment look like for us when we talk about seeking understanding? Are
Yeah.
we willing to let go of things, to question things, maybe even things we've always believed in?
It's a tough question, right? But it's a necessary one. And it takes us back to Galileo, I think. I mean, like he could have just conformed, avoided all that conflict. But his pursuit of truth, it was just too important.
Yeah. And it kind of makes me think about that question Jesus asked his disciples. Remember, have you understood all these things? It's not just about hearing it. It's about, really getting it, internalizing it.
Absolutely. It's about letting those teachings sink in, making them your own. And the text even mentions, it talks about the Spirit of the Lord as this guide to understanding.
So how do we do that? How do we really cultivate deeper understanding,
Mm.
especially in our world today where we're bombarded with information from every direction?
Right. It's like information overload. It's everywhere. Well, I think it's a process, right? It's about being willing to question, to ponder, to really consider different perspectives.
And being willing to admit that, maybe we don't have it all figured out.
Exactly. It's okay to sit with that discomfort. It's where growth happens. And, there's another point in the text that really struck me. It's that image of the separation, the bad fish, as it calls them. Those who heard but didn't actually understand.
That's such a powerful image. And it makes you think about, what happens when we just passively listen, when we don't really engage with what we're hearing?
Right. And I think that's where we can fall into, well, misunderstanding. It's where we can be misled. It's why it's so important to actively seek truth, to not settle for the easy answers.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the way we understand the world, it shapes everything. Our actions, our choices, everything. It's really powerful stuff.
It is. And it all comes back to that idea that seeking understanding, it's not this passive thing. It takes courage. It takes commitment, like we see in Galileo's story in those parables about the kingdom.
Exactly. It's not always easy or comfortable, but it's so worth it. It's
Mhm.
how we grow, how we learn, how we really change.
And I think that's the challenge for all of us, isn't it? To look at our own lives and to ask, where do we need to dig deeper? What beliefs do we need to challenge? Where can we really push ourselves to seek that deeper understanding?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. Something to think about as we go about our day. And hey, maybe even something to discuss in our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next time.